24 rounds over 1,500 laps, and in the eyes of the British, Max Verstappen has finally been defeated. Welcome back to Motorsport 101. But by who, Chris Kamara? Welcome to the final Formula 1 episode of the 2025 F1 season. I'm your friendly neighbourhood host, Dre Harrison. Glad you could join us as ever. And wow. At some point, I wasn't sure if I was actually going to say this sentence, but Lando Norris is the 2025 Formula 1 World Champion. And the second most important sentence, we have survived the 2025 Formula 1 season.
Yeah! Yeah!
We made it! we made it to the end. Somehow, McLaren did indeed finally put the fries back in the bag. As you can see by the beard, I have aged like 5 years over the course of this season for the price of one. I'm now aging at cat rates. The way this is going. I think it's going to be my 50th next year. The way I'm
Give
trending
us
right
attention if we're going to age like cats.
I know, right? It wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt at all. But they got there in the end. We got there in the end. Sadly, no Cam Buckley this week. He's in the middle of a power cut in the middle of New Hampshire, poor fella.
No. What I think it is that he's just paying homage to the village people, and he's going to show up uncomfortably late to the proceedings. So the FIFA Men's World Cup draw happened this weekend. Hi, I'm RJ O'Connell, by the way. Whole lot of nonsense. Way too much of the 47th president of the United States. Yeah. Village people come on late on the stage. It all just feels very silly. All that to just like pull balls out of a pole and have Wayne Gretzky mispronounce the names of small countries.
If you love, like, if you know this podcast, we love a good sporting tangent every once in a while, and the pre-show is the perfect way of doing so. I mean, that was one of the most surreal, ridiculous, and awful sporting ceremonies that I have ever seen. And I thought Diana Ross missing a penalty from 6 yards was bad. This was something else.
Well, we could have left it at just the FIFA Peace Prize nonsense.
No,
and then the rest of it happened.
Yeah, it's like the idea of Donald Trump receiving a peace prize, the first ever of its kind, made up because everybody in football knows that FIFA President Gianni Infantino is a massive arselick for the Donald in this instance. That was bad enough, right?
Uh-huh.
Then we had the draw itself. Like again,
yeah,
of all the footballers in the world that FIFA could have chosen to host the actual drawing of the balls, Rio Ferdinand,
not Landon Donovan,
not anyone from North or Central America, given this is being hosted in Canada, USA, and Mexico. No, Rio Ferdinand.
Yeah, not Chicharito, not Alexi Lalas, although we kind of be thankful that that's the case lately.
Thank God. Like, could you imagine him at the end of that show if Alexi Lalas was there? He'd have shit himself.
Oh, dude. Oh, man.
No. Yeah, like, the idea of, like, Jason as well said, FIFA Peace Prize from the organization that said rainbow armbands are too political. That Peace Prize. That from that FIFA. No.
Today I feel bald.
Extremely bold. Yeah, it was amazing. We have Rio Ferdinand, who has the reputation in England of being about as thick as two short planks. Like, having to try to explain to casual audience members how the draw worked, because it was very complicated. You had 48 teams, but you could only have 2 European countries in the same group and not have 2 from any other region, so they had to keep shifting people around. And you thought Rio Ferdinand had to be the man to explain it, which
Dude, I thought they just completely overcomplicated the whole process of explaining this whole John.
Yeah, because they think they're being balanced and equal by having it be from, you can only have the European countries have two to a group, which again just kind of says it all, really. And then the funniest part of that, though, was we had two of the three main stage hosts was Heidi Klum, German supermodel, royalty, and you had Kevin Hart, who is 5'3", and then
he stands right at Shaq's belly button.
And coming out to present and to do the actual drawing, Wayne Gretzky, arguably greatest hockey player of all time. Aaron Judge, well on the way to being one of the greatest baseball players ever. And by the way, 6'7" if you don't know your baseball. Aaron Judge is an enormous man, right?
Yeah.
Tom Brady, who was big for a quarter. He was 6'4" in his own right. He's a big man, Tom Brady. He's bigger than you think he is in that sense when you see him on TV. And then Shaq comes out directly behind Kevin Hart, and Kevin is below Shaq's shoulders. He's like nipple height.
Yeah, and then this is Shaq. This is Shaq in his middle age, so there's a good chance that the wear and tear on his lower body has actually made him a bit shorter than he was in his playing prime, and he still dwarfs Kevin Hart. Yeah,
I would still generously say that Shaq is still 7'1". He's an enormous lumbering giant of a man, and Kevin Hart looked like a burrito that Shaq would eat in a particularly feeling it day as a cheat meal at Chipotle. It was, oh boy, it was a spectacle. And then as RJ mentioned at the end, when it was all done and we thought we can finally go home, the first ball was drawn 90 minutes into this ceremony, by the way.
Yeah, by the way, we were promised a draw at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It was 1:30 before we finally got a ball drawn because we had to have music. We had to have this Peace Prize sham. And then once we draw all the balls and Scotland is terrorized by the fact that they drew Brazil and Morocco in their group again, everybody thinks all the host nations got cupcakes in their group again. The village people get to play YMCA because our 47th president really loves YMCA for some reason. And they come on stage late. They miss their cue, not just by a little bit, but by an entire verse.
They were a good 30 seconds late. So I love that the band had to kind of makeshift, redo the opening verse again. It's get out there, you idiots! No, eventually they all filter their way out onto the main stage. But it's it's not like they missed their cue by a couple of beats. They missed it by a good 20 seconds. It was humiliating. And then
clips of the performance and then cutting away to him dancing along to it with the captions of this is the hellscape of America in 2025 in one clip. I don't mind the village people. I really do mind the guy that cut away from the village people to show dancing to the village people. That itself is fine. I just thought it was funny, by the way. All this for the most expensive World Cup. The least affordable tickets, the least affordable hotel rooms, and that's even if we're even going to let you into the country to watch your favorite team play.
Yeah, now we need mandatory social media checks, which I think is an easy way of saying how many global football journalists are not going to be allowed in to cover this tournament. On a semi-serious note, I wonder what Grant Wall would think of all this. God rest his soul. Dear Lord. To say the least. Yeah.
Aren't you glad we're going to talk about something more civilized like Formula One? That famously apolitical sport where nothing strange happens. Oh, by the way, Lando Norris won the world title!
In Abu Dhabi. The crown prince of sports watching. Yeah! Woo! Abu Dhabi! We paid extra to be the finale.
All this did was reinforce the idea that this finale should be in Sao Paulo or Las Vegas. Dre, 100%. Tell the folks where you can find everybody, this wonderful podcast if you're listening for the first time, or if you're just coming back.
Yeah. Apologies for that, for the football there for the first 8 minutes or so. But if you want to be here for the Formula 1, you can find us at a few certain places. We're on youtube.com/motorsport101. We're on facebook.com/motorsport101. We're on Twitter at motorsport_101. If you want to follow our personal handles on Blue Sky, you can. Trey Harrison at bsky.social. RJ O'Connell at bsky.social. You want to follow Cam on there, it's cbuckley917, our other co-host who's normally with us. You can follow him on there as Well, our website, motorsport101.com, which has all of my thoughts on the championship decider itself in Abu Dhabi. And by the time this goes up, there'll be a brand new Ask Dre. Merry Christmas from me to you there. One of the biggest ones I've ever done, actually. So it's a whopper. Got some really good questions this time around. So check that out if you haven't already. F1 season review content will be coming soon. We'll have a podcast on it next week. As well as written content from me on the state of the season up on our website, motorsport101.com at that point as well. We'll try and maybe get the award show out before Christmas. No guarantees. The MotoGP season review podcast will be out later this weekend. So around Saturday, Sunday sort of time as well. And then F1 will be out the week after. By the way, if you listen to this, you still have a little bit of time. This will be out before the ballot closes on December the 14th. You've got till December 14th to get your ballots in for the Motorsport 101 award show, if you haven't already. So, yeah, please, you've still got a little bit of time left. Get them in if you haven't already. The season's now over. You have no excuse. So get them in if you haven't already. Please do. And, of course, patreon.com/motorsport101 if you want to check us out on there as well and support us financially. You can. $5 for early access to both all our content, and you can upgrade to the $10 tier to listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded, as Raptor, Jason, Vic, Ed, and Kira are all doing so right now. There's a half a dozen of you in here. My God. Crazy stuff, indeed. Oh, and I forgot to mention the video highlights as well. We're on Instagram, Motorsport101pod, and on our TikTok page, M101_podcast. For some reason, Abu Dhabi still sets a lot of people off because we did a video talking about Antonelli and it somehow got 40,000 views on TikTok. I've got nothing for you on that one. The algorithm works in strange and mysterious ways, let me tell you. So follow us on there if you haven't already, and I say that Michael Massey made a mistake at the end of 2021, and people are like, no, he didn't make a mistake. He manipulated the decider on purpose. No. Way to prove my point in the video that, we took the wrong lessons from that race. Who'd have thunk it, Anyway, all of that in mind, check us out, social media, all across the board. Right, we've put this off for long enough. Let's talk about the Formula One season finale, the 2025 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix.
Yeah, and then Marty missed his cue on the VSC coming out, and he flips over those two cars, and ultimately Jake Dennis is a really convincing win in Sao Paulo to open out the seat. Wait a minute, sorry, wrong script. Right, the decider in the desert too, McLaren Boogaloo. This is the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. This is the title decider that we've been hoping for. The first three-way championship decider since 2010's three-piece with a biscuit, when we had Lonzo, Weber, I think it was Hamilton.
It was Hamilton and Vettel. Yeah.
Yep. And Hamilton, and it was Sebastian Vettel that ended up winning that championship. And it was Max Verstappen who dictated the terms of engagement of this Grand Prix. His two best laps in qualifying were good enough for pole position over championship leader Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, who qualified second and third. Verstappen took the early lead. Piastri, going off sequence, starting on the higher tire, started third, passed Norris on the opening lap to get up to second place. Norris stepped aside so he could move to second, stayed with Max on the medium. Verstappen did a one-stopper and boxed early, letting Piastri lead, but Verstappen's pace was too strong for Oscar, who was passed on the overcut late on, with the Aussie unable to reel in a 24-second gap on the tire delta. So Verstappen wins. He wins the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, gets his 8th win of the season. Piastri finishes second, but all Lando Norris had to do was finish on the podium, which he did. He finishes third, and by 2 points over Max Verstappen, Lando Norris wins the 2025 Formula One World Championship. This is the first McLaren driver to win the World Championship since Hamilton in 2008.
Yeah. 17 years.
First double title for McLaren since 1998. Man, remember when they'd gone so long without a title? That seems like such a distant memory. They're now comprehensively the best team in the sport, despite not being able to execute the level we all think they did, but with the combined 14 wins for their two drivers, a constructor's title and the driver's championship for Lando Norris. I just have to say it once again. It turns out that when you have a young driver that for years was able to almost always maximize the equipment he was given when McLaren was not good enough to challenge for podiums and wins on a regular basis, and you take that driver and put him in a car that is capable for wins on a regular basis, he might just be able to do enough to win a world title. I know, crazy, right, Trey?
Couldn't have put it better myself. I mean, do not get us wrong. We'd be hypocrites to ignore the fact we joked about McLaren putting the fries in the bag for some time now, and they absolutely made a dog's dinner of this, as we Brits would say. Max did win 6 out of the final 9 races down the stretch to really make it interesting. I mean, we'll get to Max in a minute, but you know, I want to give Lando his flowers first, because the overriding theme for me of this year's championship was, I had to call it the Lando way. Because I'm a New England Patriots fan. We had a cult following when we were a dominant NFL franchise, and we'd call it the Patriot way, that classy manner of going about ourselves. It was all fake bullshit, but it was this whole, we're the classy franchise. We help the opponent's team get up after a hard hit. We play the game the right way, and we win it in the most cringe-inducing. Like, I hated that shit. I do not get it wrong, right? I say it's the Lando way because Lando is a very different sort of driver and a very different sort of person. And I talked about it in Brazil when he won that race, and that felt like a breakthrough. He might actually pull this off kind of race. And for me, when I think about Lando, I think about the start of this season, where he struggled. He was second best to Oscar Piastri for the first 2/3 of the year. The fact that, you know, he had a couple of qualifying crashes early on, the fact he openly admitted that he struggled to get used to a car that was built a bit more for speed as opposed to what their drivers may or may not have liked. The crash in Canada, where he drove into the back of his teammate and wrecked his race. People don't talk about the fact that after that crash happened, Lando would have been 3 out of the next 4 going into the summer break. He bounced back. He was able to show some genuine grit. He's been very open about his mental health, about him being his own worst critic, being incredibly self-critical of himself. Down this stretch, Lando Norris drove like a world champion. You know, I wasn't sure if he was going to come back from being 34 points down after the Zandvoort technical DNF, but for the next 7 or 8 weekends, he was just better than Oscar. And yes, Max was better than the pair of them down the stretch. We all know that. But Lando, when it mattered most, did just enough to be able to win, and he was able to clutch it out, and he was able to just do enough to get over the line. And that's all you need to do. A lot of people on the internet have been down on Lando for a very long time. There's been accusations of being a bottler, of being someone who threw stuff away, about how he couldn't miraculously pull in 80 points on Max last year. Like that's some easy thing to do on one of the best drivers that's ever done it. Like, no, like it's never been as simple as that. I think a lot of people have wanted Lando to do things their way, and when it mattered most, Lando won this championship his way. And I will very much give him the Enzo Ferrari hat tip for that, because that can't be an easy thing to do in a sporting environment where for years we would tell people, you've got to be Michael Schumacher, you've got to be this cold, emotionless, ruthless bastard, because any sort of discrepancy was seen as a sign of weakness, or that it was something that would compromise you from being able to win the ultimate goal. Lando did it by being vulnerable, by being critical of himself, and by being anxious. And he still was good enough to win this title. So my overriding message when I talk about Lando in this World Championship is, fuck you, let them do it the way that they can do it, because Lando Norris is walking proof you do not have to be the stereotype in order to win. And that is a very important thing for this new generation of Formula One fans, as far as I'm concerned.
You have to have that contrast, right? It's like there is a generation of people that will always look towards the Sennas, the Schumachers, the guys with that ruthless killer instinct, that win at any cost mentality. But without guys like Prost, Stewart, Clark, the so-called gentleman racers, it's less of an interesting tapestry. If you have a grid where everybody wants to be the most ruthless, win at any cost competitor, then you don't really have anybody that stands out in that regard, I guess. I don't know. Lando, to me, has always had the potential to do this. I remember seeing him climb the rankings of the ladder system. Like, is this some sort of triumphant underdog story? No. He's always been a top prospect, and he comes from wealth. Has he always been a very good driver? Absolutely. I didn't think a world championship would happen to this stint in McLaren, but it did. Because, I mean, Lando's been through some rough years. He's been through this whole rebuilding process. He was brought in because Fernando Alonso dipped, and they lost faith in Stoffel Van Dorn, coming out of the McLaren Honda disaster, the McLaren Renault disaster, Zach Brown taking over the team. He went through all of that, and he ended up winning a world championship. And that way for his loyalty reminds me a lot of Mika Hakkinen. Very quick, very loyal to McLaren. Didn't always look like he was going to win that championship in 98, just like Hakkinen did, but he ended up doing it. And if nothing else, he does elicit a lot of nervous laughter. Except in Lando's case, I think the nervous laughter is from him, as opposed to like the media people eliciting their nervous laughter every time Mika Hakkinen made a deadpan joke. I don't know, man. That's what it came across to me.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair to say. And yeah, it's and don't get me wrong, some of the criticism was valid. This was not an easy championship for Lando Norris to win. This was a championship that I think will actually age really well in the long run. I think it's the sort of championship that told a very interesting story, because you can't tell it without Oscar Piastri being so great early on. You can't tell it without Lando Norris bouncing back. You can't tell it without the final third, the front wing upgrade that unlocked Max Verstappen's true speed again at the end, and seeing how big a deficit he can make up. Or the nature of McLaren and its papaya rules, it tried to play God with luck and fate because it felt like it had the privilege to do so given how strong its car was early on, and how it very nearly didn't work out that way for McLaren in the end. There's a whole bunch of flashpoints we could go into that, if it goes a little bit differently, could have ultimately swung the title another way or another. But ultimately, the Lando way came through. And like you said, he's always been this good. And I think that might be part of the reason why he has had such criticism, is because he walked into Formula One in 2019 a little bit under the radar because he didn't win the F2 title. George Russell did. He was one of the first of the F3, F2 perfect run through the junior sorts of talents. But Lando very quickly became the face of this McLaren team. And I think he's very quickly become the face of Gen Z Formula One, in the sense of...
Which is crazy because Max Verstappen is in that generation too.
Technically, yeah. But, technically, but Lando being, he's the youngest new world champion we've had in terms of date of birth since Verstappen. Like you take Verstappen out of the equation, it's Lando. Before that, it's Sebastian Vettel, who was born in 87. It's that whole lost generation tennis argument all over again. That, only 2 tennis Grand Slams are won by players born in the 90s. 80 was won by people born in the 80s. It's a weird thing. But you've also got to look at Lando from he's been very clever in that he's been very much a man of the people. He had a YouTube following, he had a Twitch following from the time even before the pandemic made it cool, and everybody was hopping on Twitch to go play F1 2020 on their games consoles or sim rigs, or go take up iRacing again. Lando was in touch with the new wave of Formula One fans way before a lot of other people did. You know, the Twitch profiles, the social media, the LN brand, the bright yellow that's kind of become synonymous with him. You know, Quadrant and the sub brand. And a lot of my friends were part of that initial creation of Quadrant. Niren's a great guy. Arav's a fantastic YouTuber, one of the greats in that regard. Steve Brown is a fantastic YouTuber, now turned full-time racer. Couldn't be prouder of him. You know, those are a lot of my mates. Those are people that were in the embryonic periods of Formula One YouTube, and he's been molded into a sub-brand that's now tapped into a lot of young people. It is F1 sidemen. Call it what it is. But he is going to be, I think, a huge plus for Formula One as a world champion. He is a breath of fresh air to the elitism that this sport often portrays and gives out, because he's so not that, again, that bullshit mantra of machismo and, you know, you've got to be this bastard-like figure to go and win, or, you know, you've got to be ice cold and ruthless and log off social media and go train in the mountains with Shaolin monks overnight to be the best driver you can be. Lando's going to go home, burn some toast, and figure out when his next Twitch stream is going to be. Oscar Piastri, in the same way, is now probably going to go home and figure out how big a poster of Mitchell Stark he can put on his bedroom wall, you know. And that's okay. That's cool too, to be the anxious, introverted guy that also happens to be one of the best racing drivers on planet Earth. I think that's cool too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has to be said, by way of him running the 2018 Rolex 24 at Daytona in a Ligier LMP2 alongside eventual Le Mans 24 Hours winner Phil Hansen and some Spanish guy named Fernando. Dare I say, LMP2, the breeding ground of Formula One world champions. I will say that in Cam Buckley's absence.
Get Dorian Pam back in there. Get the F1 Academy lot going as well. Why not, right? I know, right? I mean,
I'm so worried about the future of the games, but that's a whole nother subject.
I know, right? So, I mean, the race. I mean, we're talking about Lando in a more of a general sense, mostly because the race was very straightforward in the sense of,
how do we say this? Everything we expected to happen happened with very little intrigue. I mean, Piastri got ahead of Lando at the start, and that was about it. Yeah, Norris was within reach of Charles Leclerc, but as we all know, with the 2025 Ferrari, SF... if that's his closest threat, then he had no threat behind him. No. 2025 Ferrari, shambles.
No.
We'll talk about it, likely in the awards, likely in the review show.
Yeah, I mean... like you said, because it's a season decider, because it was a three-way title decider, the first of its kind in 15 years, there was a lot of spitballing as to what could happen. You that's what you do when you're a sports fan. You run through all the scenarios in your head. You try and think about, you know, what could happen. What if George Russell plays spoiler and sends one down the inside like he's done in years past? What if Charles Leclerc can play spoiler if he drives at his best? Can anything disrupt? Because let's be real here. You look at the championship standings, it's been Piastri, Norris, and Verstappen all year long. They have won 22 out of the 24 races this year. George Russell being the only other man to win a Grand Prix this year. And they were begging for another one of those Mercedes Grand Prix they can't really explain, that they're suddenly in there and competitive. That just didn't happen. This race played out exactly how the form book suggested. Max dominated, which is a bit of a minor surprise. I didn't think Max was going to be that dominant in race trim. Like, Red Bull had a perfect weekend.
Qualifying lap, though. Golly.
Stunning. He didn't even need the Tsunoda toe at the end of his first lap because he had an even quicker one in his back pocket ready to go. No, I didn't think Verstappen would be that good in Abu Dhabi, but Red Bull got the setup bang on from the very start of the weekend, and they were quick as hell. And we'll talk about Max in a bit more detail very shortly, but McLaren actually split strategies. They actually let both of their men run their race. Piastri needed a miracle, so you give him the long shot strategy. Put him on the hard tire, hope for a safety car. Hope for the cheap stop, turn it into a one-stopper and try and go for the win on a Hail Mary and see what happens behind you. Lando Norris knew a podium would be good enough, so he didn't contest Piastri passing him. He knew third would win him the title, so he took an easy third. Max decided, I'm just going to run as hard as I can and see what happens, because that's all he could do. Everybody played it the way they could play it, and it was all... It's amazing, given this has been a year that's been full of shenanigans, dodgy penalty calls, moments of road rage, shenanigans, red flags, team orders, bad strategies. This was the most straightforward race we had in 2025. And when the title picture needed clarity, the sport gave it to us.
Maybe there was that one split second where we're thinking, is Norris going to get trouble for passing Yuki Tsunoda off the track? And then they just decided, Norris didn't really do anything wrong because Yuki Tsunoda, in his best attempt to recreate the Mexican Ministry of Defense, just threw a chop block just so crazy. And it didn't even work, man.
One, it didn't work, and then two, he got a time penalty for more than one change of direction, which basically is a weaving penalty. When was the last time a weaving penalty was called in Formula One?
Sunday, as it turns out.
Before Abu Dhabi. They look, weaving has been in the book, I think, as far back as 2021. And my first thought was, they call these now? They never called weaving penalties. It's like the dummy pit stop. It's actually in the rules. You can't do that, but they never fucking call it. So what's the point? But they actually hit him with a weaving penalty. They hit Lawson with a driving erratically penalty for a late shot block as well, going into that same turn 6 braking zone. The stewards were extra spicy this weekend. They were like, we're just gonna cut out the weaving or the erratic, blocking calls and nonsense like that on socials. So I don't even know on this one. The stewards must have been like, you know what? We're tired, we're cranky, we've had like probably 6 or 7 of these all year because they rotate stewards. Derek Warwick was back in the box. That got the Mercedes fans all going for obvious reasons, or the Hamilton fans going, and they just were like, we're just gonna call everything now. We're in playoff mode here. Like, just fuck it.
No, but specifically in the early stages of the playoffs, where we decide we're going to call everything, and then as you get further down in the bracket, they're just like, we're going to let stuff slide because we don't want to be guilty of deciding a championship by way of a controversial penalty call.
Yeah, that's kind of what it felt like, but. Yeah, Lando did pass Tsunoda with all 4 wheels off the track. Technically speaking, that's not allowed, but because of the Tsunoda shot block of his own, they exonerated him because he felt like he had to do that in order to pass him. So one kind of directly leading to the other meant no penalty for Norris. And that was as near as we got to any real fright for Lando not finishing third. Because Charles Leclerc, bless his heart, he tried. He drove his nuts off on that Ferrari that weekend. He really
tried. He got the fastest lap in 4th place out of that thing. That car, that hunk of garbage. I'm going to save it for the review. I'm going to save it for the award show.
Hell of an effort. He had no business being in 4th. None. That was another incredible Charles Leclerc drive because no one gets more out of less in F1 right now than him. Shout out to him. Man. Shout out to Fernando Alonso as well. Last race of the season, 6th place. operating a DRS train for the ages, and actually got a top 10 finish in the championship on the last race because of that P6 finish.
He finished one spot behind for Carlos Sainz in the standings. I'm not going to give myself hope that the Aston Martin Honda connection is going to bring him back into form that he can win a third title at age 206. But I mean, that's nice. That's nice.
It's nice.
I mean, talking about stuff we didn't expect. We knew Max Verstappen was a long shot to win the title, but I mean, he had a 104-point deficit to a race. He almost overturned all of it.
What an unbelievable final run that is. Like, just for context, the most anyone had ever come back from with this scoring system and this scoring format in Formula One, ironically, was Max Verstappen back in 2022, when I believe he was 42 points behind Charles Leclerc after the first 3 rounds of that of the championship, where he had two DNFs in the first 3 rounds. Because his car died in Bahrain, his car had a hydraulics failure in Australia, and he was way off Charles, who won 2 out of the first 3. That same early on, he was 104 down after Zandvoort with 9 races to go, and he lost out by 2. That is utterly remarkable. That's unthinkable. Again, we were saying this multiple times this season when he was like 60 or 70 back in Baku, and even when he was like 40 back going into Brazil, we were sitting here going, because it's Max, you can't quite rule it out. And the people that were the believers were right to think that, because he ended up just 2 points short in the end.
He didn't finish off the podium in the last 10 Grand Prix of the season. Of course, the Vegas disqualification helped. I'm sure a lot of people will point to the Spain incident. That was really silly. He really shouldn't have done that. But even then, he got hit by Antonelli, and also the car was just not in a good operating window to start the season. Everybody will tell you this. It's the greatest front wing upgrade ever. Sometimes it only takes that much to turn around the season.
I need sports fans to do me a favor and don't try and marginalize 24-round championships down to single incidents. That's not how this sport works. This is not NASCAR, where we have a playoff format where those one individual moments matter a whole lot more, because that's what the sport is deliberately trying to do. This is a league format. It's a race week by a race week by a race week, and I feel bad that Kimi Antonelli felt like he had to go over to Max and apologize for anything.
Yeah, he even said, like, Max Verstappen said, "Mate, don't apologize. It's all good." And they hugged it out after the race.
He's got nothing to be sorry for. Like these things happen in motorsport and in racing. You don't think, okay, Kimi made an honest-to-God mistake in Austria, right? Yeah. That was a big one. Yeah. That was potentially 12, 15 points for Max right there. That arguably was more damaging than anything that Spain may or may not have produced, right? These things happen in motorsport. You don't think this might cost him the championship in 4 months' time down the road when these things happen. You live for the moment, not for what could happen 2 races, 3 races, 5 races, 10 races down the road. That's not how this works. It's very easy to adjust these moments, but there's a reason why in Doctor Who you're not allowed to change a fixed point in time, because we all know how dangerous that can be. It's not fair to demonize entire seasons off to one flashpoint. And even if you want to play the Barcelona card, GP got it wrong on giving the place back to George Russell in the first place. And I'd argue Max doesn't lose his head if he's not told to give the position back. A better pit wall and that situation was likely avoided. So probably. Again, it's a team sport.
We can all say that, like, Vettel lost the title in 2018 when he ran off the road in his home race, when there were a lot of cascading effects that were going to make sure that he didn't win that title in the long run.
And quite Ferrari. And quite like you said, RJ, Red Bull's biggest problem was they had an uncompetitive car for 2/3 of the year. A car that was not good enough to win this championship, because if you're McLaren, of your 14 wins for the year, 12 of them were in the first 2/3 of the year. We were looking at McLaren like it was going to be an all-time world beater when this season started. And they went cold down the stretch. They didn't win a Grand Prix after Brazil. They only won 2 after Zandvoort. It was a car that was pegged back. Red Bull closed the gap, arguably overtook them to a degree, and as a result, McLaren had to take increasingly bigger gambles to stay in front because of their ride height device. I almost said ride device like this is MotoGP. Their ride heights, like we saw in get bike racing out of my brain. Like we saw in Vegas, they were marginal in Austin and in Brazil as well. That was a team that was stretched to its limit because they had to take those risks to stay in front. Max Verstappen is the best racing driver in the world today. He's one of the greatest to ever do it. This is a season for Max that is, for me, is up there with any of his world championships.
Yeah.
You don't do what Max just did. If he pulls it off, it's one of the greatest championships for any Formula One driver ever, because no one's come back from that big a hole to win the title. The fact that Max very nearly did is unspeakably great. And at the end of the day, we're talking about a man with 71 wins and he's still only 28 years old. Get out of here, man. This man is a joke. Honestly. Ridiculous talent.
Dude. Yeah, I would liken this. This is his Schumacher 98 moment. Because, there's all these parallels. Mika does just enough to win the title. Things happen for Schumacher in 98 that cost him the championship. And it all adds up to a very compelling season in the end.
And I said it's up there as a championship season with a man who already has a 15-win season and a 19-win season, and a 2024 he arguably didn't have the best car for 2/3 of the year. He is a special talent.
Sometimes eight wins. His 8 wins still leads the league.
He had the most pole positions. He had the most wins on the year, and I think he led the most laps, and he didn't win the championship.
Yeah. But it doesn't feel like...
Christian Horner's run in the first half of the year got this team killed.
Hey.
Oh, well.
On that note, should we talk about the news?
Yes.
Should we talk about the news that came out this week? Because, in the words of a Chicago sports anchor in the late 80s, when Doug Collins was fired from the position of head coach at the Chicago Bulls, if you're getting ready for work right now, then you're probably not Helmut Marko. Helmut Marko said he resigned. He's retired from his position as advisor of Red Bull Racing. That's what he said, Dre. That's what he said. Says.
But that's not the true story. Now, I need to point out here that I'm very much in the mood of Christian Cage during his peakness in AEW wrestling, where he goes, "That bitch is dead." I am celebrating this in the style of Pack Watch because Helmut Marko was a horrible human being and he deserves no flowers, and I'm glad that he is gone. For those who need the real
he's still
story,
alive, by the way. He's just retired, by the way.
Yes.
Not shoved out the door because of meddling with Red Bull's upper management. Totally
now, for those who
not.
don't know, like Helmut Marko has ran the Red Bull Junior team for 25 years, since 1999, roughly. Now, after the power trip struggles that we saw last year with Christian Horner, the alleged dismissed sexting scandals that he had to deal with, there was a genuine rift in the Austrian and Thai ownership groups of Red Bull as a parent company and as a big old brand. The Thai portion of that ownership lost a key 2% stake earlier this year, which meant that now both sides of the company owned 49%. The Thai sides that were very defensive and protective of Christian Horner didn't have the clout to overrule the Austrian side of the ownership group. So Horner was gone. Helmut Marko apparently took that to heart, that he was now the sole person in command of the team, so he went out of his way to sign the talent that he wanted to sign. From what the Dutch read, I think it was De Limburger that was reported it originally, they reported that Helmut Marko was single-handedly responsible for the hire of Arvid Lindblad towards the Racing Bulls team for 2026, and that did not go over well with Lauren Mekies, the CEO of the team, now at Red Bull, the CEO of the F1 team specifically, and Oliver Mintzlaff, who is the CEO of Big Red Bull. Not Red Bull Racing, Big Red Bull. The entire company, Red Bull.
Yeah. This is the straight lace. This is the new Dietrich Mateschitz, except he's a bit more straight laced, and if he has reprehensible takes, he's doing a very good job of keeping that shit buttoned up because we don't know anything. He's just here to count the money.
He's a football guy, and football guys like to count the money, right? For those who don't know, he used to run Red Bull Leipzig, the German Bundesliga team.
The very beloved Bundesliga team, Red Bull Leipzig.
Of course. No, so what happened was the management got involved and told Marko, okay, we like Lindblad. We're going to let this one slide. Do not go over our heads again. You can imagine like Joe Pesci in that scene in Casino when they're out in the desert. Don't you ever go over my head again, you Jew motherfucker, you. I'm quoting the movie, not the action, not anything actual. I just thought that scene.
But that scene that's more offensive in the TV edit. But we don't have to. Well, nevertheless. Okay,
nonetheless.
So it's a risky signing. Red Bull didn't approve of it. They'll let it slide because they like Arvid Lindblad. And, we wouldn't have thought that was a crazy signing, right? If it was us making it and not Helmut Marko, we'd be like, yeah, this makes sense. Arvid Lindblad is the number one prospect in the Red Bull Junior team already. He's had a ton of hype going up through his days, coming up to Formula 3. He was a little rough around the edges of Formula 2, but maybe he thrives in F1 next season. I get it.
Sure, that made sense, but he was specifically told, don't go over our heads again. So what does Helmut Marko do? He goes over their heads again, and he goes and attempts to sign Alex Dunn, the Irish Formula 2 prospect.
Again, very fast. He's got speed that you can't teach. But if Lindblad was rough around the edges, Alex Dunn is made. He's rendered in the roughest PS1 Saturn era polygons you can imagine. He actually got enough penalty points to get a race ban at the end of the F2 season.
He did.
Which are going to be reset once the new season starts. So what does it matter? I like Alex Dunn. Again, if I was Red Bull, I would like this signing because he is that good.
He's a very, very quick driver. And it makes a lot of sense to sign him. However, Mekies and Mintzlaff specifically told Marko beforehand, do not sign Alex Dunn. We do not have the room for him. Do not sign him. Marko went and did it anyway.
How about I do anyway? You're out!
And it's the Sean Williamson meme of, we're going to do it anyway. We're going to do it anyway. You get the gist. So that's why that story broke, that Alex Dunn had been suddenly let go out of the McLaren camp because he had gone off to have talks in Vienna with Helmut Marko and Red Bull about potentially joining their academy with the promise of an F1 seat in 2027 if he did well in F2. Yeah. Now, again, Dunn was released from McLaren because Zach was pissed that, Dunn had talked to another academy without telling them. He's now in limbo because once Red Bull management finds out about the deal, Mintzlaff and Mekies are seething with rage, and they tell Marko, you need to cancel this deal immediately. And of course, they had to. the deal was cancelled, Alex Dunn was never officially unveiled as a Red Bull driver. You may have actually noticed in the last 2 weekends of the Formula 2 season that Dunn raced in a plain white road in none of the usual papaya orange he'd had for that previous season was there anymore. He was never unveiled as a Red Bull driver, and apparently Red Bull had to shell out a 6-figure fee in the hundreds of thousands to release Dunn from the contract and give it to him as compensation, and allegedly that was the final straw that they had to sit down with Marco and tell him, you're done here, buddy. We're going to start it out end of the season, but you're done.
Yeah, and by the way, you're missing the worst part of this for Alex Dunn. He's now linked to the Alpine Academy.
Oh,
it's better than nothing, but there's a reason why Alpine Academy common success is an ironic meme, not a sincere one. Most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great comment from Steve in our chat where he goes, Marco really is like a blackjack player. Hit me with another solid junior driver. Surely this will take my team to 21. Here's the problem,
20.
Steve.
Hit me.
You're on 20. Hit me. Had the exact same thought. Exactly. No, it's... Marco was clearly on a power trip. And Mintzlaff, the overall... This is a man of few words, right? But the one thing that's abundantly clear, at least in my opinion, is that he wants to clean this shit up. He sincerely wants to get rid of the stench of Red Bull that came from Christian Horner and Helmut Marko and the toxic environment that they created at Red Bull Racing. And I think they were looking for an excuse to get rid of Marko, and they found the perfect out by basically having him go above their heads, thinking he can just go sign whoever he wants for his racing teams. That's not going to fly anymore, because at least in the old era, as toxic as it was, Christian Horner did do a reasonable job of keeping Marko in check. That's something that they've now got to do to an even harsher degree, because the most powerful man in Red Bull Racing was ousted earlier this year. They had to pay him £57 million to go away. And this is all a cleanup exercise for Red Bull, and I think it's time for change, and it's time for a new era in that team. They've got bigger fish to fry. They've got a brand new power unit to deal with next year, and the next game is going to be, simply put, trying to figure out whether they can keep Verstappen by having a package competitive enough to keep him around. Because next year is a huge year for Red Bull. New power unit, Ford collaboration, Max Verstappen in a contract year. There's a lot that could go wrong, and that's something that could very easily get messy.
I don't want to write off Max Verstappen just because of a power unit change going into a new regulation cycle. I would be foolish to do that.
The way this season played out, you couldn't do that, No, and
absolutely. There are question marks about what Ford Red Bull powertrain is going to look like going into 2026. Absolutely, but it's Max Verstappen. These seasons are long. Anything can happen. That's what I got to say on that regard. As for Helmut Marko, thank you for Vettel, Verstappen, Sainz, and Gasly, and all the other hits over the years. It's been past time for you to go. It's over, man. Enjoy retirement. Leave us alone.
Pack watch. Yes. No more stupid bullshit Marko interviews. It's the end of an era, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. I'm glad that fucker's off the grid. Jesus Christ.
So glad.
I do not like that,
so
man.
Glad. We don't have to worry about, which side won the war in the end. Neither of them did.
Right. Just... At least if you like Red Bull, you can feel a little bit less guilty about liking them, given that the two most nasty people in that organization that bred a lot of nasty shit are now gone. A quick word for Oscar Piastri on the way out as well, because he also played a very important role in this title race. I mean, we'll talk about him in a bit more detail when it comes to season review time next week or so, but I mean, what did you make of the Piastri effort and his season as a whole?
I think he did all he could in the final 2 races to really pull this back in. I know that there are a lot of hometown fans who feel it's happened again. Their guy is never going to get the favor from the team that he drives for. Saw it with his manager, saw it with him. I think he's got time to make good on this. Look, he's only in his third season. I will give him a little bit of grace for coming off the boil late in 2025, man. I will say you really shouldn't get in the habit of that, though.
No. You don't want people to start hanging on to that as a reputation bender that, hey, you want to be the guy that blows it down the stretch. The current world champion had that unfair label too, and we saw what it did with how he was discussed on the internet. Mm-hmm. It's a weird one because a lot of Piastri fans feel like he was hard done by over the course of this season. I don't think that's strictly speaking the case. I think every time there was an option to swap or whatever, I think McLaren were generally reasonable most of the time when it came around. The one dodgy one was, I'd argue, was Monza. And even then, I could see why they did it. And if you've got two guys that have bought into the papaya rules regime and this is how they're going to run their team, you're going to have to accept you're going to be asked to do something you're not going to like at a certain point. It was the same with Lando Norris in Hungary in 2024 when they asked him and begged him to give up a victory in exchange for Piastri's first win and quote-unquote doing the right thing. Now, again, I'm not the biggest fan of the happy fun times vibe that McLaren created, but it doesn't necessarily mean that Piastri got screwed. The bigger problem that Piastri had was he struggled on low grip tracks and he struggled on some of them down the stretch on places he's not that experienced on. Mexico was one of them. Austin was another. Brazil to a degree. I think the penalty was stonewalled by the racing laws book that we have right now, unfortunately. Alas, that's ultimately what I think did Piastri in more than anything from his team. But I also need to stress, it's his third season in Formula One. The last time we had a third-year contender, in my opinion, was Sebastian Vettel. And he turned out all right, quite frankly. He's going to be just fine. Piastri led this championship through 15 of the 24 weekends. For a third-year guy, he has remarkable speed, excellent racecraft and poise, and he just needs to be a little bit more adaptable. Everything we've ever asked of Piastri as a Formula One driver, he has achieved and more in the short time he's been with us. He's going to be absolutely fine. I'm more than certain of that. We are dealing with a 24-year-old, year 3 guy who is good enough to win a championship. McLaren struck gold with this dude. And I don't think you've got any reason to be concerned if you're a Piastri fan in the long run. He's 24. He's got 15 more years of this if he wants it. He's going to be fine.
Yeah, and unless we have another seismic shift in the pecking order, where's it going to go? Is it going to go to Ferrari? If you're getting ready for work right now, then you're probably not the SF25.
Oh, God. As Kira says in our chat, Alpine Academy common success. Which is a very fun way, I think, to end the show this week. We'll be back a little bit later on this weekend for our MotoGP season review on everything two wheels across the space of 2025. Our F1 season review will be next week. That will definitely be out before Christmas. Maybe we get the awards show out too. We'll give you a bit of an update on that a little bit later on. Keep an eye on our social media for it. I hope you enjoyed. It's been a fun 2025 season. We had an excellent title battle that went all the way to the end. Can't complain in that essence. Told a great story, and I very much enjoyed it. Hope you guys did too. Welcome back to season review season. We'll see you back very, very soon for that. Until then, I've been Dre Harrison. He's been RJ O'Connell. Thank you very much for listening. Sayonara.
Later, y'all.
Alpine Academy common success. So when's Christian Lundgaard winning the IndyCar title?